Ladies and gentlemen, it's Hussein Obama versus Hussein Obama on whether to raise taxes in a recession or not. You may remember early in his presidency, he said the last thing we want to do is raise taxes, and if we were going to raise taxes, we'll do that when the recession is over. But this new jobs plan he's got coming out, which is just a tax and spend plan, all it is a tax and spend plan. It relies on raising a bunch of taxes, repealing the Bush tax cuts early, a year early at the end of this year, raising estate taxes because we don't want an aristocratic society, because it's just not fair that somebody built up a massive business or estate with their own blood, sweat, tears, and money, and that was all taxed, and they want to give it to one of their family members. We have to tax them for that. He also relies on taking away a lot of deductions, which would a lot of those deductions go to charitable organizations. I'm sure liberals would like. I prefer to just repeal the income tax. I think Ron Paul has the best argument against the income tax. He's not the first one to say it, but ostensibly the income tax is the belief that all your money doesn't belong to you. It belongs to Washington, and you can keep what they think you need, and if you make too much, then you may only get to keep 60% of it, and once you hit a certain plateau, Obama's going to want to take 48.8%, so there's a massive tax hike. We still engage in double taxation, taxing capital gains and dividends, which is absolutely ridiculous. That's a tax on growth. So Hussein is proposing to raise a slew of taxes. Part of that's going across your screen. Now, here's the problem. If a liberal says we're not in a recession now, you could just simply point out to him or her, and that's going across your screen as well, that the unemployment rate of full and part-time workers is much higher now than it was when the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act was signed. And they might say, well, GDP growth is much higher. Well, it's going back up now. Well, let's say the government decided it wanted to buy a fleet of SUVs for the Department of Agriculture, the Department of Energy, and the Department of Education. A couple hundred SUVs. Yeah, that would create jobs and that would increase GDP, but it doesn't create any wealth because you're taxing that out of somebody's pocket. Or you're printing the money, or you're borrowing it from China. Or the same thing, if the Department of Defense decided, well, let's buy 50 more Ohio-class submarines. Yeah, it would create jobs, but it wouldn't create any wealth. It's a false hope, and that's all Obama's done is he's spent gobs of money to do very little to the economy. So I would argue if they say we're not in a recession now, then they can't say we were in a recession when Obama took office, really, looking at the jobs numbers. And if they say we're in a recession now, then they have to admit that Obama's policies have failed, and then Obama's violating his own pledge to not raise taxes in a recession. So Hussein has put his Obama files, painted them into a corner, and it'll be interesting how they respond to that. I should also mention, some people have said to me, I don't say enough about other GOP candidates. Well, Herman Cain has a 999 plan, which you should read, which will eventually get rid of the IRS, which is a good plan. I think it gets rid of taxes on capital gains and dividends. And that's the thing. Washington spends too much. They spend more than they take in. That's a big problem. But we need to reduce the money they take in, because if I had trillions of dollars flowing into my coffers, I would have a lot of power as well. And that's the problem with Washington. They wouldn't have all this power and be these rock stars that they are if they didn't have all this money. And Herman's plan will take away a lot of their money too. It will get rid of most deductions, which is a great idea. Then you'll have this Rube Goldberg tax code, and eventually getting rid of the IRS is a superb idea. So you should check that out as well.